All right, everybody. The little lady on the computer told me that the recording again is in process. So, to my team, hello and thank y'all. Hope that everybody had a wonderful day. This is God's Money Weekly Zoom training meeting. Uh, First of all, we will get our little disclaimer out of the way. Yep, Bob. Bob is texting me. Okay, we will get our little disclaimer out of the way. I apologize for the interruption. Uh, I'm a wealth strategist. I'm not a financial advisor. This is not meant to be financial advice. We teach everyone how to secure their wealth with gold, silver, platinum, palladium, and even real estate. This is also not included to be tax advice. If you need tax advice, I recommend that you contact your tax specialist for any advice on that matter. Okay, we got that out of the way. Uh, Now, Liz and Craig come up with something. They asked a question to me this week, and they said, "What about schools, private schools?" We know some private schools that need to earn money. They're struggling. They don't have enough money or funds to operate properly. Can they become members, or is there any fundraising capabilities? Well, I knew that Uri had one, but I didn't know exactly how his worked, right? And he has a Christian school. But here is kind of a brief overview of how Uri does his. He has a pre-registration meeting. It's like all the parents of the children that are coming, and he doesn't do it one on one. He does it in a group format. He will do it by grade, if I remember correctly. He and I talked. I think it was in Las Vegas, and he'll take like K through 5, and then segments of it. So basically the adolescents, the preteens, and then the teens, and he breaks it down into about 3 sections. And he has a meeting with the new enrollees, and he explains to them that what he's doing, and he goes into detail with it. He takes a couple of hours, and he has questions and answers at the end of it, so everyone knows exactly what the the purpose is and what the role is with 7K medals. Now, like Bob said to Liz and Greg, it can be done. It can be enrolled, but Yuri goes a little bit farther. With him, it's not a voluntary program. If your child enrolls in that school, you must pay the one-time $5.99 lifetime membership, and you will put that in your name. But you put it in your name with the understanding that that membership is for your child and it's for your child's future. So when they graduate 12th grade, they already have some type of college fund or start in life. So they're building wealth for them at the same time. Now, what does that do for you? And what does that do for the school? Well, it's a binary system that earns income. So now that school is not depending solely on donations to operate, it's earning its own income also. So to me, that that is just a wonderful thing that you're not totally dependent on just the donations. Now, after the call, I discussed I shared with Greg and Liz that not only that gives us an opportunity to right some wrongs. See, God's money and gold and silver and the security that gold and silver offers to us is not taught in our schools. Our schools teach about fiat currency. They teach about banks and administrative stuff, stocks, bonds, all that stuff in economics. They teach about the corporate world. They don't teach you to be independent of that world. They want you dependent upon them. And this is encouraged by the institutions that want you to be dependent upon them. But this gives us an opportunity to educate our children in another way, the way it was for over 6,000 years of human history before the banks, central banks, and governments came up with the concept of fiat currency and what I refer to as indentured servitude, because we are subservient to that fiat currency and what the government says it's worth. As to where if you have gold and silver, you back your own self. You don't need them. And that scares them to death. Okay. So they don't want us to be independent of them. Now, one of the things I love about it, and I was giving the example, I have a grandson that's 7 years old. His name is Felix, and we just love him to death. He's cute as a bug. But he is a chip off the old block of my wife. His grandmother and him, I mean, they're like this, right? And she can do no wrong with him. And that's a beautiful thing to watch. But I also see her personality in him. Uh, he, at 7 years old, is an entrepreneur. He understands the value of things, which is extremely rare. Uh, but of course, still, he knows he's got his grandmother wrapped around his little finger, right? And he knows how to manipulate her. Because the other day he called her wanting something, and he says, "Mama, I want to ask you about something, but I already know what the answer is going to be." See, so he was fishing for what he wanted, and he knew that she was going to say yeah, but he was pointing it, phrasing it, or framing it as if she was going to refuse him. So he's already business shrewd. Now, last summer he came over and he spent his few weeks with us that he does during the summer. And the day before, Kim had taken out some of the collectible coins we have, and he looks at them and she goes over things, and she uses things like the Abraham Lincoln or the George Washingtons or the Ben Franklins. And as he's looking at them and learning them, the coins and studying them, we're also teaching him history, right? And we're teaching him stories about these forefathers and these founders, things that he will be running up to in school before long. We also get to teach him with the beauties of the world about beautiful places all over the world and what they are. Matter of fact, one of the things we plan, and we talk about it often, Kim and I, is when he gets in his teens, and he's old enough to travel, and we start traveling abroad, we're going to start bringing him with us. I think that would make an excellent, well-rounded education. Our sons, they always travel with us, and that broadens your education. There's nothing like the experience of seeing the other cultures or the other places. Now you can read about them all day long, but until you experience them, you just don't really have the full depth of the difference between the world that you knew and the world that you're going to visit or that you've read about. So it's a wonderful thing. And he decided, he told his grandmother, he says, "My mom, I want to make some money." And she said, "Felix, what do you want to make some money for?" He says, "I want to buy some gold and silver." So this is a 7 year old that already understands that value of gold and silver. So that is the thing that we have the opportunity to start planting that seed of knowledge in the schools and the school children. Uh, One of the things I mentioned to Bob, and I said, "Bob, what about school lectures? Could we go give lectures at these schools, say to the juniors and seniors prior to them stepping out into the world so they really understand the legacy that their parents is leaving for them by becoming members of 7K?" He said, "Absolutely." He said, "There's absolutely nothing illegal about that." See, so that's another platform that we can bring to the table when we're talking to these people, that you have experts like myself or like Bob Reed that can come in and give seminars. And that's not an unfamiliar area for me because I've given lectures and seminars at colleges in my chosen career in broadband. Matter of fact, one of my most fun stories is when I was speaking at University of Maryland one time, a young man, and I was probably in the industry probably 24, 25 years, and I spent over 51 years there. And I always had a Q&A at the end, and one young man threw up his hand and said, "I have a question, Mr. Wiley." He said, "But it's not a technical question." I said, "Okay, what is it?" He said, "After all these years in this industry, why haven't you retired?" And I almost giggled for a moment or two, but then I realized where he was coming from. I had actually been in this industry longer than he was old. So that was more than a lifetime to him. So he was thinking, 20 years you retire from whatever you're doing. He just hadn't wrapped his mind around that concept. So I told him, I said, I'll just have to think about it for a while and I'll get back to you. I promise I won't forget you before. And I took a few more questions. In the meantime, back in my mind, I'm thinking, what am I going to tell this young man? But I want to make it lighthearted, right? So what I did is I got back around to him and I told him, I said, look, I said, I've been in this industry since the early concept of this community, this industry. And I went to talking technical to him of all the advances that in that 20 something years that broadband had made, cable and the internet. See, I was in this before internet even existed. I'm one of the people that was doing some of the research and development for Scientific Atlanta that actually enabled us to have what is referred to as upstream communication, which means downstream, and then the devices in your house talk back up to the area called the head end. That's where all the stuff is generated. That's where your servers are. So two-way communications, I was in on some of the ground floor of that development. So with all that said, I told him, I said, well, this is where we are today. So I guess to answer your question, I'm just hanging around to see what's next, right? So, but we still have that opportunity with gold and silver because what we're doing here at 7K has never been done before. We are disruptors in this space. And we can really tell people that our founders live their mantra. And my most favorite part of our mantra, our company mantra, and I don't know if y'all got around to hearing it yet. Blake does it on some of the recordings. But one part of that mantra is they said that we couldn't, but we did it anyway. And I've been with the company just long enough now to see some of those rules broken that people said it couldn't be done in this space, but they figured out a way to do it. They're innovators, they're disruptors. You know, you take uh, people like Amazon. Amazon was a major disruptor in that space. They put Sears and Roebuck and mail order catalogs out of business because they so changed and innovated the way it was done. What they were doing, the old business models just became obsolete. Well, that's what 7K is doing. You take the tools like our stack and sell. That has never been done before. It used to be the old method of liquidating that collectible coin was bring it down to your local pawn shop or coin dealer and you do the barter and trade stuff. We've all watched Pawn Stars. We know how it works out, right? One or two outcomes. You're either going to walk away with what satisfies you or you're going to walk away with the coin that you brought in. And he's probably going to send you a little story. And I've heard it before. Well, there's only like 60,000 people in our little town. That's a small population. I've got this overhead. It may sit on my shelf 2 or 3 years before I sell it. I don't think I can give you that. Well, see, we just shot a hole in that with our stack and sale. You are the coin dealer. You don't have to bring it to him. You are the coin dealer. You can list your coin for sale on stack and sale. You have an international market, 32 countries with hundreds of thousands of buyers. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Liz, did not Bob say that there's 56 more countries in the pipeline to be done by the end of 2025 last time we was talking? I think 56 was the number that he was talking.
He sure did.
Yeah, 56. See, I didn't even know about that. Normally, Jason would, because I talked to Jason quite a bit. Jason would say something to me about it, but they've been keeping that close to their chest. And I think Bob just let it slip out last night. I don't think he was supposed to let it out. But now we know that they're working on 56 more countries. Can you imagine what that's going to do to our capabilities? Now, so we've got the schools. I've talked about the fire drill in the past. That is a path too. If you want to go back and look back at some of my trainings, I talk about fire drill, how we can leverage things like fire departments, police departments, EMSs, those type services that they're a small knit community. Now we've talked about schools and what we can do for schools. And I mean, that's an awesome thing because, see, one of the beautiful things about the schools is you're going to be setting it up to where there's a residual income. And each year, that growth factor is going to grow because what happens each year? Another generation of children becomes school age, right? Then you're going to have another effect on the other end. So let me take it away from that school for just a moment, and I'm going to put it into the world that my wife was in for a while. When I met my wife, she was a beautician. She had one little bitty beauty shop right beside our house. But after a couple of years, I was making good money. We moved to another location and she wanted to expand. So she bought a bigger, larger shop and she hired a couple more girls to work. She does share rental or pays them percentage, right? Commission. Well, that kept growing. And by the time she decided to retire from that and her health just wouldn't let her do it anymore, she had three beauty salons. She had two dog grooming salons and her own line of cosmetics. So now you see where Felix gets that entrepreneur spirit from. I mean, she always loves a challenge. And to her, it's not the money, it's the challenge. It's can I achieve this? It's like a competitive athlete. But I said that to say this. I've watched her take ladies into her shop over the, I think it was like 26 years that she did that. And those ladies would come in and they come in with their teenage daughters or teenage sons. Well, over time, those teenagers graduated high school and had children of their own. And then they're bringing their children. So you start stacking multiple generations of people into your business. The same thing would apply to 7K. The same thing would apply to the schools. Because once those kids graduate, what happens within 3 to 4 years? They've got families. And those families within another 5 to 6 years is going to be what? They're going to be in school. So now you've got three generations that's going to be affected by 7K metals. You got the original parent, the top child that graduated, and the new child that's going to be coming into it. You can see there how it's going to start being a generational thing, right? Now, another thing it's going to do too is going to start what I call piling on or just stacking on the layers of wealth that they will have. Because the legacy, what is one of the things about a legacy? The thing about a legacy is that it's inheritable. So remember that it's inheritable. So that parent sets up an account. Now, whether they keep it or the child, when he becomes 17, gets his own, that's immaterial. But what happens when that parent, the original person, passes away? One of those children or grandchildren inherit that policy or even a trust. So you're going to start building layers upon layers upon layers, a thicker and thicker platform of memberships. Because remember, those memberships never go away. They're a legacy. They're forever, one and done. Pay for your life, pay for the life of the person that you will it to. So you start getting those layers of membership. So the sky's the limit with that. All you have to do is be able to articulate how that works because it's a no-brainer. It's a win-win situation. It's a no-lose situation. You can't lose with gold and silver. Um, One of our co-founders, Richard Hanson, the one that Bob talks about, is a close friend of his, uh, and I love Richard. And I have a little video that I had on YouTube, Facebook, I think, or YouTube, I can't remember. But I may go back and get it. But he's talking to me, and we're at 7KX, and he was talking about what was going on there and everything. And he made the comment. He says, "Yeah, we have a product that's as good as gold because it is gold, right?" So, I mean, you don't get any better than gold and silver. Now, check my time a little bit. So I'm at 7:31. One of the things I want to dive into is silver. Okay. Silver, and we talked a little bit, Liz and Craig, last night after the call with Bob about The purpose of silver being the exchange medium or the purchasing medium for gold. You can never buy gold with gold. It just don't work that way. How would you, right? An ounce of gold is only worth an ounce of gold. There's nothing else above the gold that you can purchase with it. Nothing more pure, nothing more precious than the gold, right? Now, maybe you can buy diamonds, but gold is still better than diamonds. You can use gold to purchase diamonds also. But the exchange medium for gold is silver. So many ounces of silver would purchase you so many ounces of gold. And we talked about some of those unique situations and numbers that were scriptural. But something happened in the late 80s and early 90s, somewhere about 1988, 89, all the way up to 1996. We started developing a different usage for silver. See, silver up until that point was used for one of only two purposes. You either made jewelry out of it or you purchased gold with it. But we discovered, and a lot of my industry was one of the drivers of that, is that silver is a metal that has an extremely low propagation rate. Now, what does that fancy word mean? That fancy word means that unlike copper or steel or aluminum, if you put a current of electricity on one end and push it through to the other end, it loses electricity as it goes along. It's called propagation. You lose the value. So you may put in 12 volts here, and by the time you get out the end of that, according to the distance and the gauge of wire and a lot of other different math and algorithms we would have to do, you may come out with, say, 6 volts over here, right? So you're going to put in 12 and you'll come out 6 with copper. But you could take silver and you could put in 12 and you would come out with 11.5. It doesn't lose or propagate at the same rate. Silver conducts electricity extremely well. The only thing that conducts it better is salt water. And there's no way to contain salt water so that you can use it in wiring and circuitry and stuff of that nature. So silver is the medium. That's the reason that we can have devices like this. See, if we was to do this with conventional wiring, it would take a suitcase to pack it around. But this we can stick in our pocket because we can run ultra low voltages. We also found out that it has medicinal purposes. It will purify water. So if you're drinking this, it's purified with water. A lot of medicines and tinctures and different things have silver in them. There's one that they use that's called silver iodide. I think. Isn't that the one, Jerry, correct me, I think you were close to the medical field at one time. They use that for burn patients, don't they? So, and it's like in a cream and it's used all over their bodies, right? So it has medicinal purposes too. With all of these industrial uses of silver, now instead of just only two forms of usage, we have three, and one of them being the industrial usage of it, and the growing portion of the industrial use of it grew up to about 51% currently. So the other two together is at 49%, and we have one, which is the driver, at 51%. Now, there are some predictions, different people, some say $50 an ounce by the end of 2025. And I got to do some research, and what they base this on is that factor, that 51%. Because Donald Trump, our wonderful president we have now, is starting to do something that Ronald Reagan did in the past, but he's doing it on a scale that is far greater than what Ronald Reagan did. He is turning loose the industrial machine, and he's putting tariffs on other countries that's going to do away with NAFTA. What is that going to do for the United States? Jobs are going to come back here. But where are those jobs? Those jobs are going to be all across the spectrum. It's going to be from farm to factory. Now, what does farm and factory have in common? They all use machinery that requires electronics nowadays. So the demand, that industrial use, is going to skyrocket as the machine starts growing. Well, what's going to happen to the supply? It's not going to increase very much. So the demand is going to outrun the supply. And what happens in free enterprise when you have low supply and high demand? The value of the product goes up exponentially. So that's why they're basing the fact that we may have, it's not because gold is going to cost less. It's just because there's going to be such a high demand for silver because of the industrial uses of silver. Okay. But let's think outside the box more. I mean, this was a great concept, and I thank you, Liz and Craig, for the question that y'all asked the other day that got my mind uh, working, got my mental juices flowing, and triggered me to ask Bob those questions so that we could do that. Matter of fact, Bob and I have actually been brainstorming on doing a special Zoom with that could be recorded that we could upload. So that may be something in the future that y'all can look forward to because he's going to dive deep into the details exactly how you would do it. But at this point, if you want to start putting your fillers out, start talking to these people. If you know people that have charter schools or not charter schools, private schools or co-op schools, uh, Christian schools, tell them that you may have a method to where through their 501c, they can actually earn income that would be tax deferred. They won't pay taxes on it. That would support the school above and beyond uh, the donations, and that could also work as an educational tool for the children and even their parents. And that you could have guest lecturers come in and talk about it with them. And that's where myself and Bob would come in to help y'all and assist you. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording. We're now at 38 minutes. And that's going to give us a few minutes that we can have some questions and answers because I know I've probably got some of y'all starting to think too. So we're going to stop the recording at this point.